Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Retro Encounter. This is episode 68, and today we are going to be talking about a wonderful roguelike, The Binding of Isaac. I'm Christopher Gebauer. I'm going to be your host for today, and on this podcast of biblical proportions, we also have Dong-hee Kim.
Hello.
And Robert Fenner.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, guys, we played this delightfully horrifying and mind-bendingly cruel in its visuals game that is yet somehow super charming. I'm not great at this game. We were talking about this a little bit beforehand. I wish I was a lot better at this game because it is so creative, and I desperately wish I could see everything. But, yeah, I guess let's start off with do we have any history with Binding of Isaac? Have you guys poured hours into this game before we started handling it as a topic for the podcast?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll start.
Doug, please.
So I played a tiny bit of the Isaac when it first came out. I think it was like 2009 when it was just like a flash game of sorts. And yeah, I didn't spend a lot of hours, but yeah, a lot of my favorite YouTubers were also playing the game at the time, so I just played around with it a little bit. Yeah. But I started sinking a lot of hours into it once it was like, whatchamacallit, when it was like re-released on Steam as Rebirth. When they had like when they actually put out on the game engine and stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, ever since it came out, then I played a lot of hours, Yeah.
Yeah. Understandably, it is easy to get lost in this game. But how about you, Robert?
I was familiar with some of Edmund Macmillan's Flash output. I played his gross shoot 'em up, the C word, for quite a bit.
Yeah.
And when I heard Isaac was coming out, I mean, I think they announced the console port very, very early on, like years and years before it was ready. So I was thinking,
it took forever.
I think maybe I'd like to play this on console, so I'll wait a few months. And like a few months turned into something like 3 years, and I finally picked up the vanilla version on Steam maybe in 2013 and put loads and loads of hours into that. And then when Rebirth dropped on Vita, I picked that up and put even more hours into that. It's, as you said, it's an extremely sadistic roguelike, but one that the death to restart time and I know just the things that it throws at you, I find it to be an intensely replayable and addictive experience, no matter how cruel it is. So yeah,
does it with such a. I guess what fascinates me, and you hinted on it right there, is that the game handles with its humor and its art style and everything with a sadistic glee. It's very tongue-in-cheek to me, and at the same time very blunt and brutal. Again, not just because there's a ton of blood and grotesque sprites for every bad guy, but also because, I mean, your weapon is tears.
That's true.
Quite literally. And it evolves if you get power-ups into more powerful blood that you're crying.
Yeah.
Power-ups you're shoving into your body, so that by the end of a run, you look like some amorphous, strange thing with different kinds of Frankenstein-like prods that I guess you're gathering electricity from. I don't know. I've had, and I know since you guys have put more hours, you could probably comment more on it, but it's everything is hilarious and toilet humor and absurd, but at the same time, it's grounded in a biblical story. The Binding of Isaac and Abraham. So for those who do not or have not read the Bible, it is based on an Old Testament story, very loosely. But this game is incredibly gross and intense, and yet it pulls it off so brilliantly and with that cartoony style that it doesn't bother me. I mean, I remember when this game came out and people said it was too gross. Not overwhelmingly. I mean, the game reviewed well and did well, and very similar to you, Rob. I only played it once it came to Vita because I love that little thing. It will support it till the day it dies. And yeah, I waited 3 years for this game because it fascinated me in terms of its style. And Super Meat Boy and Indie Game the Movie really gave or put Edmund Macmillan on my radar. And that was at about the time where I was really beginning to explore Steam and that marketplace a lot more. But yeah, there's something just viciously wonderful about this game that I don't see elsewhere. And it's, I don't know, it's the tongue-in-cheek brutality. It's just, it's so charming and horrifying. I don't know how else to say it.
I've read some interviews with Macmillan where he's stated that the game is kind of loosely based on his experience growing up in a fundamentalist religious family, and like some of the aspects, like the child abuse and the Magdalene character, which is just Isaac in a blonde wig. Apparently, like I guess his father was like abused and forced to wear a wig as a child, so. Like I guess it's part of him trying to make sense and not exactly make light of, but like come to terms with his family's troubled background and his own way of coping with that. Which, I mean, I guess laughter's the best medicine, I suppose.
Totally. Yeah. Similarly, I was reading a thing where he mentioned like growing up Catholic, and on the other side of his family, fundamental Christian. And the balance between the two, and enjoying church as a Catholic and being inspired, and yet at the same time hearing them damn things that he loved, like Dungeons and Dragons and other stuff. Because especially in the 80s, that was that era of the Catholic Church hating everything that a lot of people began to fall in love with, like metal and D&D and anything that could be conflated with the occult and anything demonic. There was a big pushback for a lot of the stuff, and apparently Edmund Macmillan was caught up into that a little bit, and just clearly, and at least in this one thing I was reading, per your point, Robert, is that he had a hard time grasping and really just kind of would shrug his shoulders, being like, on one point I find this, on one hand I find it inspiring, but yet on the other hand, everything else that I enjoy it tells me is wrong. And it doesn't add up, and it doesn't seem to make sense. And then, clearly, I didn't know the part about his father, but, I'm sure tie in a lot of other very personal, specific things. And you have a game that is just, again, I feel like it's a fascinating cocktail.
I mean, I hope his childhood wasn't nearly as traumatic as Isaac's.
No.
Where he's like...
Thankfully, I think creativity inspired a lot there. But yeah, I know, right? Yay! We're all trying to get out of the box.
I still have trouble figuring out exactly what the story is, but from what I've played, Isaac is like dying throughout the entire course of the game. From what I've gathered,
that is a very common theory. Actually, I was reading a little bit last night to see what people have been able to kind of come to terms with about the game, and for the most part, it sounds like you're pretty spot on, Dong-hee.
Yeah.
So I guess we should talk about how this game functions. It's a roguelike. Since I played it on a controller, I can only speak to how it feels in that sense. And you use the D-pad or left joystick to move around, and you use the right joystick or you're on PlayStation, it's your sacred symbol buttons to shoot in the 4 directions. And it starts with you being banished to your room by your mother, who's been spoken to by God while watching one of her Christian television shows, and tells her that her son Isaac needs to be punished and has sinned and needs the sin stripped from his life. So he gets locked in his room and all his fun things and toys taken away. And then God tells Isaac's mother to kill him as a sacrifice, similar to the story in the Bible. But instead of a ram in the bushes and God saying, "Oh, no, you showed me that you cared, you were all good," she tries to kill her son, and he escapes in a hatch in the basement, and the game is you constantly trying to find a way out of death. And as Dong-hee mentioned, it doesn't really seem to happen. But you go from room to room, and using at first, as I said before, your tears as a weapon, you shoot and run and bomb your way to some kind of ending. And while the game is not I mean, it's nuanced in terms of its variety and how deep the systems are. But what I find so impressive about this game is that at its core, it is so simple. It is just move, shoot in directions, find the boss room, move on.
It's like a poop-filled Zelda 1 dungeon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That is so spot on. Yeah, it really is. And yet, which is also one of the main inspirations. Robert, ladies and gentlemen, is on point. On point. But, yeah, like I said, I wish I was so much better at this game because I haven't been able to see a lot of the end game. But, Dong-hee, you mentioned it. There's just something about it that the second I die, I'm just like, damn it. I wish, that shouldn't have happened, should have been smarter, should have dodged that, whatever. And then I immediately restart.
Yeah.
So much so that there are days where I've looked at my watch and it's been 4 a.m. and I'm sitting in bed with my feet like, this was a bad idea. There are things that need to be done. But yeah, it is one of those perfect one more time games. I don't know. It's weird. With the power-up specifically, is there anything, I guess, in terms of gameplay that stood out to either of you? Dong-hee, since I know you've put in a ton of time, and you've seen this game evolve. Well, both of you have to an extent, but you've, especially since you touched it when it was a Flash game. I only know it with I only know Binding of Isaac with its at least, 400 items or whatever the hell it is that you can pick up as it went. But I know when it started, there was a lot less of that. In terms of how the game's evolved, do you remember where it was when you first saw it and played it versus now the kind of cornucopia of options available in it?
When it was still just a Flash game, it was, I do remember it being distinctly much harder. For instance,
really?
Even if you picked up all the overpowered items, it didn't guarantee that you would you that run. For instance,
wow.
In Rebirth, if you pick up something like Brimstone or Mom's Knife, you basically won the run pretty much. You can reach most endgame bosses too, with some degree of consistency. But in the original Flash game, it was just so much more punishing, where Brimstone and Mom's Knife would greatly increase your odds of getting that, but it wasn't nearly as guaranteed as before. And I think that part of that has to do with how as you mentioned, how many more items there are in Rebirth and how many more busted synergies there are. Brimstone and Flash in the Flash version didn't really have a lot of synergies, if I remember correctly. You just could tears up, fire rate ups for it. But in Rebirth, you can do some crazy stuff like Brimstone and Tiny Planet, and you basically have this giant tuba of a laser, of a blood laser around you when you fire. So no enemy can touch you while you're firing, and stuff like that. And that made Rebirth a lot more fun for me.
Right.
But at the same time, it also made it a lot easier, which I don't think is a bad thing. But it was just something I noticed while playing.
And what's fascinating is it's still very much up to chance whether you get those, game-breaking items or not. Unless I'm missing something and there's a way to guarantee certain items and I've been cheated.
But that's basically cheating.
What are... I'm going to be made fun of for this. Yay, Twitter. But clearly I'm not good enough to know what seeds are because I haven't seen them. What are seeds?
Oh, you will. If you press pause... If you press pause, it'll display a code in the corner, and that code is assigned to that specific makeup of the run. So people will share their own codes, which determine what items you get, what bosses you see, and you can enter that at the beginning of a run. But I think that might disable achievements. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah,
for Rebirth, it definitely disables achievements.
So it's more of a practice thing than a...
I was going to say, is that how the speedrunning community handles the game? They have a set code that they know that they're going to use, kind of thing?
I don't think they actually... I don't know. Maybe they do.
I should double check. Because I just know that I was watching a speed run the other night. The guy beat it in, 8.5 minutes, and I'm just staring there going, I wish. One day. I wish.
I think I read somewhere that seeded runs were I think they're more frowned upon in Rebirth, just because of how much more like broken
Like
stuff
you said,
can get.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So, but in like, I think in the original, you could just like, you could just seed yourself with the most like overpowered items in like the first room, and then just try and speed through it. Because even then, you weren't guaranteed to win, so it was still pretty much a skill factor.
Right. And that's what's great about all roguelikes and the kind of resurgence of roguelikes, at least in these last few years, and on console specifically, because I know Steam and PC has always supported the genre to an extent. But, I mean, when the right balance is struck, and we talked about Rogue Legacy in our last episode, which I think is another fantastic example, but in Binding of Isaac as well, when the balance is struck, and here it definitely is, it's the most addictive loop I can imagine. We've talked in the past about, on this podcast and elsewhere on this site, about the RPG loot loop, like a Diablo 3 or something else that, the one more green item, the one more legendary, whatever keeps you going with that fact that you know that the next whatever is right around the corner. And what I love about roguelikes, and more so in Binding of Isaac, if we're going to compare it specifically to Rogue Legacy from a few weeks back, is that the items are so out there and crazy. And like I mentioned, I've put in good time, but I haven't put in an infinite amount of time in this game, so I've yet to see nearly everything. So it still surprises me. And as Dong Hee mentioned, even if I'm finding something I've experienced before or an item I've had before, I might combine it with something new or something maybe that I also knew, but I didn't realize what the combination and what the synergies are going to be. And all of a sudden something totally weird has happened with Isaac. And as it's happening, his character model is morphing and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's so simple. And I don't mean that in its systems. I just mean if you look at it on the screen, panel to panel, room to room, it seems so simple. And yet, spending 10 minutes with it, you understand that there is incredible depth. And I love that. It's not minimalism, but because it just isn't in this game. There's too much at stake, but there definitely is that less is more mentality, and I love how streamlined it feels. But at the same time, again, I know that that's not the case. It feels like you have to get better to be better at this game, or super lucky. But it's also not terribly cripplingly hard.
Yeah.
Like I to a Souls game in that you know what you did wrong. It was on you.
Yeah.
Usually, sometimes RNG gets very in the way.
Yeah, sometimes you get some really nasty item placements.
Oh yeah, that for sure.
Yeah.
Why is it around spikes in the middle of a hole that I can't reach and won't from the majority of this run? Thank you. But yeah, it's just I don't know. There's something about everything, art style included. It just strikes the right chord. And you joked about it before, it's the most poop-filled Zelda dungeon. There's poop everywhere in this game, and blood, and urine. It's the most visceral, body fluid game, and yet it works.
I think Rebirth's redrawing of the characters in chip art was a real good move, personally.
I didn't see the original then.
It's like kind of more Flash styled.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, although at times I kind of miss the hand-drawn style, I do think Rebirth looks a lot cleaner.
Jeez, I mean, I like both. It looks great.
Yeah, they have their merits.
They have their purposes. Now, we've been talking about items. Are there any combos that have gotten either of you either to beat the game or gotten you the farthest in any run? Is there anything that you desperately dream of every time you play the game to hopefully find around the corner?
I'm gonna. There have been a couple that have taken to completion.
Nice.
Oh, we're not like usually. Like I used to hate the Ludovico technique.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing where like you just have one singular tier that just like floats around that you control,
Right.
and it floats around. And I used to think that was like the most like garbage item ever. Like you just had like you just went from like shooting things to now you just have to like awkwardly steer around this tier while having to dodge enemies. But combining that with Brimstone
Yes.
is crazy. You get this like giant blood laser ring of doom. And then if you have like homing on top of that, that thing like seeks out enemies for you.
Oh, God,
So
I
it's
need
like
this.
so you can just like so you can just plant it in the middle of a room, and then it will just kill everyone, and then you can just
Awesome.
move on to the next room. So
How about you, Rob?
Yeah, well, that's basically what I was going to say as well. I mean, Brimstone plus
Damn.
Ludovico is basically like the win button. So, you can either be encased in this ring and pretty much be invincible, or, send it out with the right stick and just move it all across the screen in this wave of death. But I feel like that's like the most memorable one for me, and I keep hoping to encounter it again, and I never do. But I like playing as Azazel a lot, who starts with Brimstone and Flight. Who's I think he's unlocked by making three deals with the devil in a single run. And he starts with no permanent hearts, but he's got these 3 black hearts where if they're depleted, they'll damage everybody on screen. And unlike the ghost, the super hidden character, he is capable of gaining hearts. So, if you get the right collection of power ups and health upgrades, and speed and damage upgrades, Azazel quickly becomes pretty much unstoppable. And it's a hell of a lot of fun to take him into the big boss rush that happens after you beat Mom. Yeah. So Azazel has quickly become my jam.
I haven't played with him yet. I got to really try that. I don't know why. I have just really stuck with Isaac. I've unlocked a bunch of other characters, but I haven't messed around too much with the other skins and their varying abilities. But now that you've just explained it, I've got a feeling I'm going to be that little tiny baby angel of death for a while.
Eve is pretty good as well. She's got like a sort of a rage mechanic where when she takes damage, she transforms into a horrible death-dealing creature.
God, this game is so creative.
She's like the she's like the emo.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really made me like stick with the game was just like how like thematically coherent the characters are, like with their gameplay, kind of. Like Azazel is like this like spawn of devil. And like devil demon, so he like has no red hearts, and he's like flying, and then he has like the I get what I'm assuming is like the signature like demon tier ability, which is Brimstone, and then whatchamacallit, like Judas, he's like the traitor, so he only starts with like 1 life, but he also has like a lot of damage as well, and it's like, I just think it's like cool to see how like the nuances with each of the characters, like in terms of like what their themes evolve around and how their gameplay also like is incorporated into that theme. And with like Eve as well, where she starts off where like if you take her down to 1 heart, she gets like a damage and a speed boost. It sort of like ties into her like emo character as well, which I thought was pretty funny. So
I do like it's always great when you can create abilities for a character that feed a personality, and I say personality even in a game where your characters aren't talking, but to your point, I think it still rings true, especially if you design your characters correctly. Then the abilities that they have, people will go, oh, that's awesome. And again, it's just that extra little touch of it all comes together.
Judas has got his 10 pieces of silver, but also notably he's wearing a fez because Edmund McMillan's got beef with Phil Fish.
Oh my God, that's right. I didn't connect that dot, but you're totally right.
Yeah, he came out and said that that's what it was.
Okay. Oh man. Oh man.
But I think it's
more
like
sharing a movie with him,
like a lighthearted jab rather than.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil Fish is a fascinating person. Maybe we'll talk about one other day.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I mean, that's also, I guess, a great little thing. And then I kind of want to talk about what we think the story is a little bit with this game, because it is so wonderfully vague. But, I mean, Ed McMillan is, I mean, it's kind of fascinating because he's been making games Flash for forever. Newgrounds and other spaces. You know, one of those kind of last bastions of the YouTube era and all the rest of it, and Steam and everything else. But I mean, I remember watching Indie Game, the movie back when, and seeing the story of Super Meat Boy, and Phil Fish and Fez and Jonathan Blow a little bit, but the guy seems like the funniest, goofiest, just affable human being, Ed McMillan. And Meat Boy was a success that let him do whatever he wanted afterwards. And, this was the first huge project. Well, there was a few others that got ported over, but this was, I remember everyone talking about this. Every media outlet was covering this from its inception of, oh my God, this game is so creative. Oh my God. And yeah, I don't know. It still stuns me. We've talked about, the world that the game takes place in, what it looks like, how gross and all the rest of it. The monsters you face are all abortions and weird, strange, horrible amalgamations of human flesh. Like, it's so out there. And this is a game that if it was made by most people, I won't say everyone but Edmund, but if it was made by most people, I think it would have been torn apart. And granted, there was a lot of backlash to this game, but it was drowned out by how much love there was for it. And I remember, yeah, because there's always going to be people, if you're talking about their religion, are not going to be totally happy if it's not painted in what they perceive to be a good way. And
At
I
least
think
he's got a history to back it up, though.
Yes, no, totally. And but even if he didn't, I think it's
Sure.
You're telling your own story, and as the creator, it's up to you. But there's always going to be a backlash. But this guy, because of his work before, of how he's been in the community, and also the wonderful success of Meat Boy and how it really, launched his career in a major sense. I mean, again, he's made phenomenal games without it, but that was the mega financial success. And then he became the darling. And he used that, this is so ridiculous, but he really did use that power for good. Like, the guy made a game that he had been thinking of for a while and was like, screw it, let's do it. Yeah. I know I've been a little tongue-tied throughout this podcast, but the creativity on hand in this game really blows me away in every facet. And to me, it's a true gem. Not in the sense of people don't know about it, but in the sense of full package. And I know people have talked about it with it. It's going to be the newest version of Binding of Isaac is going to be a quote unquote launch title for the new Nintendo Switch. And people knock it, a lot of that console's launch lineup, because most of them are ports of games that are more than a year old. And one of those, of course, is Binding of Isaac. But knowing it's a new version, I don't know. Like, when I heard that news, I was jealous. I was like, oh man, they're going to have so many more cool things on the Switch than I have. And I'm sure patches would tell me otherwise.
I think that's,
and I'm just crazy.
I think that stuff's going to be a DLC on PC and maybe
yeah,
PS4.
Exactly.
I'm not sure. But
I'm sure, but in my head, all I'm thinking of is like, they're going to get a more advanced version of this game. How dare they? And then I immediately thought afterwards, I was like, that's awesome that I'm that upset about this wonderful little game having more content that I might not have access to. Again, it's in every level, I think this game shines. I really don't have, and this is not saying it's, a perfect game by any means, but really outside of small gripes, like, again, RNG, how the items are available to you, sometimes getting destroyed by my own bomb when I think I'm clearly out of the way. Those little gripes that you have with any game that's designed like this in terms of to be hard and a challenge. But yeah, it's just, and I keep saying charming, even though again it's filled with feces, but it is.
Yeah.
And it really stuns me that I say that every time. It's like, how is this game charming? One of my favorite weapons is drinking lemonade and peeing everywhere and melting enemies. Like, it is. I think that's one of the funniest things, that my pee is volatile. I can clear a room with urine. But you know what? I kind of buy it. And I used to think as a kid that my urine was weaponized. Like, I totally get it. Could cut through snow. It could cut through a person, right?
The kid logic of
it's fantastic.
It's great. It really harkens back to that sort of, like a dark twist on make believe and crass toilet humor. It's really smart.
It's this weird biblical grim fairy tale, but there's no moral. It's not really a fairy tale.
There's just despair.
It's just sadness and never ending. But yeah, I guess we in terms of the story of the game, I'd mentioned before just the intro, and Dong-hee, you had said a little bit more to what I think the core of the game is about, which is super sad. But what do you guys glean from the story of this game? Like, what have you been able to piece together from the multiple endings and the consistent trek onward down into the depths and the weird, monstrous creations you fight along the way?
Spoilers allowed?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
To be fair, if you are this far into the podcast and have been listening for a while, we spoil. We talk openly. If you have not played, you absolutely should. But yes, we are going to talk about what this game might potentially mean.
I think this game is so vague and leaves so much up to interpretation that, I guess spoilers, but I mean, at the same time, like, what you take away from it yourself would be really, what it means. So.
Yes, I think it is your own creation mentally. Whatever you can piece together and how the pieces fit is what it means to you. But I don't know if there's 100% a right answer to your point.
Well, from like what I've understood from the story, at least, up until like the latest DLC and everything, is that Isaac is basically trapped in his room, and his mom is trying to kill him, and she's right outside his door, and he's basically feeling like if you look at the cutscenes, it like there's something about like his family being unhappy with him or having sort of miscarriage, some sorts. I think that's what Maggie, the character Maggie, represents. But basically, and then like he's basically like thinking what went wrong with my life. And up until the latest DLC, what I basically understood was he trapped himself in his chest, and he's slowly suffocating to death. And that is like super depressing. But that's actually like that's like what I understood from the story so far. And like the various things with like fighting mom and finding like mom's heart and stuff. It's like. Yeah, I think it's like everything's just like a psychological battle for him, like coming to terms with like how he like hurt his mom, I guess, or how he thinks he hurt his mom. Yeah, for his family to end up this way.
The torn photo item is the huge one that kind of was the first one that really made me think about it. Which is a picture of him, the family torn up. And I'd never thought, like, again, to me, going to that simplicity, it was just a really fun roguelike and phenomenal art style with a little bit of a theme to it. But that item, and I didn't even see this on a playthrough of mine. A friend was playing the game, and that's how I became aware of really what happens in this game. Because, like I said, not the best at it. But that was the first time I kind of really considered that factor of, oh yeah, this is a kid who's, at least in this story, whose father left, or isn't there, but has left. Potentially a child in the family is also gone. And it's Isaac and his mother both dealing with this in separate ways. And his mother turns to her stories and her Christian stories. And Isaac is in his world of toys and his drawings, which is how all the cutscenes are presented in the game, are his drawings. And, at the end of whenever you defeat a boss and go to the next level, there's another little drawing. And it's usually some show of Isaac being tormented or made fun of or ridiculed, whether it be the wig or something else, or opening a present box and it's filled with crap, like actual crap.
Some of them are pretty funny, like where he gets pooped on by two kids repeatedly.
Yeah, and it's and when I first played, I was like, where is this coming from? But as time goes on, this ties into what you were saying, Dong-hee, because I do believe that this is a game where he is quite literally going through the metaphor of delving further into his mind to escape the reality of his death. And that idea of climbing into the chest at the end of it all. It's just like, that's the opposite of what you'd expect. You're usually supposed to go get something from the chest and move on. But he's climbing in. And this I don't have as much to back up, but one of my main jobs day to day is I narrate audiobooks, and I was very lucky last year to record one about child abuse. It was really depressing, very sad book. Don't listen to it. It'll make you sad. But I remember reading it, and there was a lot of abuse about going on in the life of this young boy. He was about 12. And reading it was incredibly moving and horrifying, and I remember constantly thinking, this is so absurd. This can't be, what someone in a relationship like this could go through. This has to be an exaggeration. And that was my mind in a lot of ways, just trying to deal with the fact that if this does happen to people, that's soul-crushingly sad. But afterwards, I did a little research and found out that, oh no, there really are many stories of abuse that terrible and all the rest of it. And interestingly enough, this game, playing it recently, and not when the first many times I've tried to be good at this game, but following that job, I don't know, just every item, everything you find, it was so much more clear to me that this is a kid who is constantly abused, at least within the confines of the game. And it's not just sick humor. There actually is something pretty troubling at the center of it. And along that mindset, Dong-hee, I began to think as well that this is just someone constantly trying to escape, going deeper and deeper in. And at the end, when you're facing versions of yourself and other crazy stuff, it all ties into this idea of just not trying to accept this reality of impending doom and trying to just go farther into his imagination to find some other escape.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really have, again, since I haven't been able to go through as much as the two of you, I don't have as many details to really pull from, but yeah, it took me a long time to start thinking about the game this way. But it's just another layer that, and I could be completely off base, but I'm fine with that. Because to your point, Rob, earlier, is that this game really lets you put it together, the puzzle pieces, however you see. It basically just dumps the box and goes, here's everything in the game. If you'd like, you can assemble, a full picture. If not, just pick up a few pieces every time you go through and have a great time. And build a small picture, like Legos. Like you can do a little small project, or you can use all the pieces in the box and try to build a masterpiece. It's up to you.
A lot of the endings, directly contradict each other. So, I guess, you can
exactly.
You can choose to take one of them as canon, or my take is personally very similar to both of yours. That they're hope spots, or fantasies that are trying to get away from a much darker outcome.
The hope. Yeah, and for a game that's so irreverent and goofy, how awesomely depressing. I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, I mean, I found the Isaac fight in the cathedral. I found that to be pretty sort of like a moment where I went like, wow, this game is actually like pretty like profound to some degree. It's like,
yeah,
like, it's like it's Isaac, and like the various stages of the fight as well, where Isaac's like lying down and he's like crying, and the more you like battle with him, the more like awakened he becomes, and then when you finally defeat him, he's like freed and he like flies away, and I sort of interpreted that as like a part of like him just like coming to terms with himself and like his actions and like his past. So
being okay with it.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, God, so dark.
Yeah.
There's
again,
the blue baby character and boss as well.
Yeah. I haven't personally fought that boss, so please explain.
Yeah. That's it's a playable character that's unlockable, but it's also the boss of Isaac's toy chest, and it's kind of, it's basically meant to be his corpse. What I've gathered is it's his corpse after he's suffocated to death in the chest. I mean, I believe one of the endings that you can get is him opening the chest and seeing himself blue and suffocated inside, and I guess like, trying to defeat this outcome that he is fated to be makes it feel like a very fruitless and particularly sad end to an Isaac run.
That was one reason why I wanted to have you go into depth on that. Is that idea of that's probably what Isaac is going through, and while everything else is happening. The game is whatever's going on in his mind while he's suffocating in a trunk. That's why I wanted you to talk about it. Is that when I saw a good run of this game and didn't play it, it was that run where I saw the photograph, and saw Blue Isaac, or that blue baby Isaac version, for the first time, and that was the first time I thought about how this game might be dealing with this kid's crippling situation. I mean, again, for a game that's so irreverent and goofy and bizarre with its designs, I think it's very easy, and understandably, and there's no opinion coming from me on this, but it's really easy to just play the game for the sake of the game. Because, again, great mechanics. Simple, but it works, and it's clever, and it's always changing, always evolving. Every time you play, because it's always going to change.
Yep.
But at its core, there's something really, as you said, somewhat profound and troubling that actually makes you think. And that is a very hard balance to strike. Granted, it's a balance that was found through almost infinite layers of can you figure it out for yourself? Of what can you make of it? And you can only really start to answer those questions for yourself by playing the game a bunch and seeing endings and experiencing all the bosses. Because one thing I forgot to kind of strike on before is that the boss at the end of each floor is, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, it's randomized in terms of which one you fight when. So you don't exactly see every boss in a run.
And more become unlocked as you gain achievements or complete runs. 4 horsemen start showing up at one point, or good old Krampus.
I haven't saw Krampus. That's great. That's great.
I think it's brilliant how achievements, especially in the Steam version. I know the PS4 version has far less
yes, it has
trophies,
much less.
But I like the fact that they reward you with tougher bosses that may or may not appear.
Although I will say that a couple of the bosses are like, just from a gameplay standpoint, they're just like, why would you put them there, or like why were they designed this way? But besides that,
We were talking about
Besides
the RNG luck early on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there definitely sometimes you'll fight a boss on basement floor 1, and you're just like, why? Why? It's not. This should be at the end.
Yeah.
This is not where I should be facing this person. And restarting the run now. Great. Yeah, I love it because we now. I mean, again, Steam has had this for a good while now, but that marketplace is also very oversaturated. But I love that roguelikes are a hot commodity again.
Yeah,
because it's endless. It is absolutely endless. As you guys have played, we were saying before, around 100 hours, maybe more. I've gotten I'm not there yet, but I've easily done half, if not more than half of that. And yet it always feels like there's something else to learn or something else to find. And that, I don't know, that curiosity, that little spark of, I wonder what else there is. What else can this game teach me or show me? I haven't unlocked everything. I haven't seen every item. And then thematically with the game, we were talking about the childish nature of it, and it seems to all be coming from the perspective of a kid. There is this weird, take out the morbid side of it all. There is this wonderful innocence to the game of you're a kid crying naked, and you're shooting tears at people, and you look super adorable, and you're doing weird things. You're like, what is this kid gonna come up against next? And roguelikes, because they are always changing with each run, are inherently replayable to the end of days. But usually they're not as nuanced with what you find. Usually it's more like it's a strategy game, but it's got roguelike elements. Like Invisible Ink is a game I've been playing recently.
Very good.
That's a fantastic game.
Yeah, I just started playing that as well.
Oh, like that game way more than I thought I would. Really like it's a gem. But what's great is, even if you fail on a run, just like in something like Binding of Isaac, you're unlocking with experience gained from a run, a new character or a new item that you might happen upon during your run, and blah blah blah. Or another great roguelike right now is Crypt of the Necrodancer, which takes the genre and does something totally different with it. But it's fantastic, and that novelty is what drives that game, because it's so different and wonderful, and it changes the formula that's so similar. Making it a rhythm game, while in practice is so much more dynamic and changes everything. It's such that becomes so much more. And what and again, going back to Binding of Isaac, is it just seems to me that there are so many of those ideas, more so that I see in a normal game. There's just so much going on. And it really kind of stands above the rest in that way. And that's what's weird. It's not even my favorite roguelike, but just how everything's put together and just every perspective it shows. Again, this weird, goofy world, but the premise is super dark, and yet you're this kid who, in a challenge mode is wearing, if you do like the lemon challenge, you're wearing a nun hat and you have the ability to peel. Like, all this absurdity, and yet at its core, it's so dark. Like, it constantly impresses me how this game balanced everything. It's not supposed to be this easy. And of course it probably wasn't. I'm sure it was really hard to make this game. I'm just a dude who plays them.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. That's the other thing that drives me crazy about this. I mean,
how quickly they made it.
Yeah, it was like supposed to be his little vacation game after finishing Meat Boy. It's like, be in Florian
was on vacation.
We'll do it in 3 months, and then it's just they've just been improving on it for 5, 6, 7 years, which it's great that they've been that it's been so iterative over the course of the past decade. But I mean, just how quickly they banged that initial one out. It's like, oh god, it's so.
It feels like cheating. It really does.
What a
guy!
Because
it's seriously, because it's like you just said, it's so good, and they did it so quickly. It feels like I'm missing something. I think that guy speaks to some kind of higher race that helps him out with his creations. 'Cause this doesn't make sense. But like, yeah, totally. You nailed it, Robert. It shouldn't be as awesome as it is. And I think the fact that it is just this great little testament to achievement. Like, it's just like, yay, someone did it. Someone gets it and can actually deliver on that promise of, oh yeah, I'm going to make a game. And it's going to be this little thing, and let's go have some fun. And then it shows up, and people are like, oh, this is just going to be a distraction. And it ends up being just this incredibly deep system-based game. I can't get over how much is in this. Like I said, I asked you before about what are the game-breaking items that you've come across, and you guys talked about Brimstone and the Ludovico technique. It's like I haven't been able to delightfully break the game yet. I gotten close a few times where I felt like certain items were just delightfully overpowered. But maybe it's the Gradius in me, but I love just being super fast and having, giant speed boosts and running around rooms like I'm some kind of hopped up jackrabbit. Mm-hmm. But I wish the game was so much more obviously complex, because it wouldn't sound like I'm talking myself into circles. But yeah, it's really a special game.
Yeah, I mean just the details in the game are amazing. Like have you gotten any of the transformations yet? Where like you pick up like a set of like specific items and then you like transform. Like I just think it's hilarious that you can pick up 3 syringes and you just like become this junkie. Yep. Or you pick up like 3 pieces of like Isaac's horrifyingly dead cat and then you become his cat.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I mean stuff like that's like and how you pick up this item and then like you sort of look like this little devil and then you pick up this item and then you have nails in your eyes all of a sudden. It's like the details. Like I have a lot of screenshots on Steam where I'm just like, how did my character end up looking this way?
Yeah, like when you
it's like I look like Jason Voorhees with a nun habit. It's like what? What?
Like you turn Isaac around to walk to the top of the screen, and all of a sudden you realize that there are 3 things jammed into the back of his skull that you couldn't see when you're walking left to right. You're like, what? Yeah. I missed that entirely.
So he shove child,
what are you
doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a syringe sticking out from the back of the neck. Just cause. Don't worry, it's safe.
Like a building Meat Boy or Bandage Girl.
Oh yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah, you can. The 4 horsemen drop.
I love it. I didn't know that.
It starts with just like a little blob of meat, and then eventually turns into
Meat Boy Bandage. I think 2 of the most hilarious items in the game though they're called number 1 and number 2, and respectively they represent going to take a tinkle or going to take a poop. But like you pick up number 1 and then you start shooting tears from your groin, and like they're young. Nice. And it's like just like the small details like that. Or like number 2 is like while you're shooting tears, like you randomly just poop bombs. It's like the little details like that, like really just like make the game for me. And the fact that those items can be used to like break the game as well, just like adds to the replayability.
And again, I mean, you're explaining these items and I'm laughing, and that's just such a direct counterpoint to what we think the game is about. I mean, I love that balance. Yeah. So, I mean, personally, I've made it clear that I think this game is fantastic, even though it's gotten the better of me 100 out of 100 times. I mean, do you guys have any final thoughts about this little delight? Robert or Dong Hee? Is there anything that sticks out to you that we haven't covered? What do you think? We've gotten pretty much everything about this little gem.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I guess I should mention is that within US DLC, the difficulty has gotten a lot closer to what it was in the Flash game.
Oh, okay.
Rebirth, Rebirth was super easy, but with Afterbirth and Afterbirth Afterbirth Plus, the difficulty's definitely gone up a lot. So yeah, there's
Nice.
that.
I haven't gotten those yet. I mean, they're not available on Vita anyway, and I don't have the Steam version of Rebirth yet. I will get it eventually, but like I'm kind of scared to to get as much as I want to see the new stuff that's in the DLC. I mean, the upping the difficulty. Oh boy! I mean, when you beat the game 5 times, you get that everything is terrible achievement, which increases the difficulty exponentially. And to just like add extra layers onto that. I mean, like it's I will beat that game maybe 5 times, and then it becomes much harder for me to have a successful run. So I don't know. I'm a little bit conflicted about the DLCs at the moment. A friend of mine who's really into it.
I mean,
he feels that I think he was having a better time before getting Afterbirth, but is still thankful for what it is.
I mean, Afterbirth and Afterbirth Plus introduced some like ridiculous rooms. Like in Afterbirth Plus, you'll have like 6 like champion super fatties when you don't even have an item yet in the next room. And you're just like, what am I supposed to do against that?
Nothing. That's the answer.
But at the same time, those DLCs also introduced a ton of just like standalone busted items. So like it kind of balances out. But if you don't get any of those items, then you're just left with a much more difficult game.
The Everyone's a Glass Cannon DLC. I like it.
Yeah. I will say that Binding of Isaac's success and effect has influenced a high number of high-quality roguelikes that everybody should check out. I mean, things like Nuclear Throne.
Yes.
My personal favorite at the moment, Enter the Gungeon, which is kind of like a mix between Isaac and Nuclear Throne, which I think, like, I like it.
So ridiculous.
I like it a lot. I think that maybe its levels are a little bit too long. So, like, the time to restart, which I've praised Isaac for, I think it's a little bit too lengthy with Gungeon. But I still think it's an absolutely stunning and very addictive game. So.
Dung here, this is a good point, since we just did 2 podcasts themed on roguelikes. Are there any roguelikes that you've been playing recently or that you would call out to anyone as well? I like this. Well done, Rob. Good idea.
I mean, like Robert said, I've been playing a little bit of Enter the Gungeon, and that's like, I've been having a lot of fun in that.
Where you have a gun that can shoot guns, that shoots more bullets, that can shoot guns.
To shoot bullets, who have guns.
It's amazing.
Or the shotgun shell that shoots shotguns. It's like,
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I guess I would throw in, if you have, like, Enter the Gungeon, Nuclear Throne is one that I've played obscenely. I haven't done Gungeon yet, though, and I like that both of you are talking about it. I gotta pick it up. I'm so behind it.
It's excellent.
Behind Dung Hee. Losing. Sorry, but are there any other ones?
Well, not for me.
Okay.
Right now,
I'm trying to think, like, a big one. It's, of course, mostly an RPG, but I think it, in terms of how everything's procedurally generated, I kind of would count it in its own little side category. One of my favorite games from last year was Darkest Dungeon.
Oh, yeah.
If you like your permadeath and your procedurally generated crazy, oh wow, that is a outstanding game. Darkest Dungeon is going to make you hate everything.
It's a very cool piece of work.
Oh, but good God, is it so good? It's so good. But yeah, it is crushing, soul-crushingly hard at times. And yet you get back up and you go right back into it, and it's fantastic. Nuclear Throne is a game that I go back to a lot. It is great, great comfort food. I recently this isn't an indie one, but I've been trying the most recent Shiren the Wanderer on Vita.
Oh, great game.
It is. I mean, that is old school roguelike. I mean, like, to a T, and I love it. But that's a great game as well. I know I'm missing something, and that I was just playing this week, and I can't think of it. I mean, Rogue Legacy, of course, is fantastic, and I think you're right, guys, though, that this was one of the... especially when it came out on Flash, because everyone always thinks of it as the 2014 console release. But, yeah, this game did help kick off this recent slew of roguelikes, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really was that first one that everyone was talking about again.
Yeah,
and then after that, we got Rogue Legacy, and I remember that was the one that got everyone to go, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing! I haven't seen it in forever." Oh. But truly, I think Binding of Isaac was responsible for a lot of that little revolution. Well,
I would agree.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't it so terrible to talk about things we enjoy? Such a soul-crushing task we've appointed ourselves with. But no, seriously, thank you guys so much for joining me on this one. It is always strange to host a podcast, as Rob knows. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This was episode 68 of Retro Encounter. Some little housekeeping for us here at the site. We have a very special Valentine's Day episode coming up. Oh my gosh, get excited. I know.
Saw the travel card for that.
The next game, I know, right? The next game that we will be covering the game we'll be covering for next month is going to be Shadow Hearts Covenant, which is a game that, while I have not played, I know it holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. Haha, see what I did there? But yeah, Shadow Hearts Covenant is one of those classics from the PS2 era that I've always heard a lot about, and I'm really excited to hear about the game. Because, like I said, it was one of those that I missed back when. Otherwise, please comment about what we've done on the forums. Tell us how terrible we are, what we've done wrong and all that jazz. Email us at retro@rpgfan.com. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is @Chris Gebauer. Rob, how about you? Where can people find you?
You can find me on the RPG Fan boards as Towns Carmarty, or on Twitter @MisanthroBob.
How about you, Don Kim?
And you can find me also on RPG Fan as DH Kenny.
Yeah, I should have probably said that you can find me on the site as well, because I do work there sometimes. And it's also Chris Gebauer there. So again, thank you very much. If you feel so inclined, review us on iTunes. We would appreciate it. It helps so much. But either way, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your whatever day this may be. Bye, friends.